Russia, if Russia has NATO right on its borders, it cannot tolerate it, and I could understand their feelings about that. Zelensky and Ukraine must understand, this was already in August, a couple of months ago, must understand, no getting back Obama-given Crimea, and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Also in August, Russia said we don't want them on our borders, and they were right. And everybody knew you just can't do that. And actually in Anchorage, I almost quoted, he said, we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. That was his statement at the press conference in Anchorage. So he went public with this assessment, which fully coincides with our assessment. And the very significant statement was made on the 16th of August, when he came back to Washington from Alaska, and he said, a great and very successful day in Alaska. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement. This is key. He answered to all those who were, since the probably beginning of spring this year, they radically changed their rhetoric, and if before they were saying no cessation of hostilities, Russia must be defeated, strategic defeat, and so on and so forth. Then as of spring, about that time, they started saying immediate ceasefire without any precondition. And they continue to sing this song until now. Rutte, Macron, by the way, Macron, when they shifted to this logic, ceasefire, stop the killings without preconditions, and then we'll see how it goes. And Macron was asked whether this cessation of hostilities, ceasefire, includes the pause in providing weapons to Ukraine. He said, no, it does not. No preconditions at all. So when President Trump, after Anchorage, bluntly, publicly stated that in his conviction, it is not a ceasefire, but a sustainable, durable peace, which, as he said, must be a long-term peace, a very long-term. And another quotation, we are not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. This is exactly what happened with the Minsk agreements, which were agreed in 2015, endorsed by the Security Council, and then the Ukrainian government and armed forces were violating the ceasefire announced by the Minsk agreements. And later, 5 or 6 years later, when these Minsk agreements were sabotaged in a very big way, the signatories like Angela Merkel, Francois Hollande, and the former Ukrainian President Poroshenko, they said, we never intended to implement them. We needed to buy time to rearm Ukraine so that Ukraine is able to continue to fight Russia. So when President Trump, after Alaska, said, we are not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. It's the best, one of the best characteristics of what happened with the Minsk agreements. And when people now say nothing but a ceasefire, immediate ceasefire, and then history would judge, it's a very radical change, especially after the coup 11 years ago in February 2014, when the putschist took power by illegal bloody coup, masterminded by the United States. Sometime ago, after this event, Victoria Nuland admitted at the hearings in Congress that the United States spent, by that time, about $5 billion to support Ukraine, and she said it was not in vain, because eventually democracy prevailed. This democratic government, which came to power illegally, their first statement showing their political instincts was that they will cancel the status of the Russian language next morning after the coup. And the coup, of course, happened the day after Germany, France, and Poland guaranteed the deal between the then president, recognized by everybody as legitimate president, and the opposition. And when we called the French, the Germans, and said, guys, you guaranteed the deal, next morning the opposition took all government buildings and so on and so forth. And they said, you know, sometimes democracy takes an unexpected twist. Interesting. And then, of course, they sent armed groups to storm Crimean parliament. That's when the people of Crimea rejected this power, these authorities, and held referenda. Then Donetsk and Lugansk, the parts of Donetsk and Lugansk did the same. It is not for territories for us. It is about the people who have been living on those lands for centuries, more than 300 centuries. They were building cities, including the city of Odessa, a very famous place which was founded by Catherine the Great, whose monument recently was removed by Zelensky government, who would like to forget all parts of history which one way or another link Ukrainians and the Russians. But this is going to fail. He cannot undermine this. So my point is that, and when President Trump said about NATO in Alaska, when also in Alaska he mentioned about territories, for us it is not territories, it is the people who live on these territories. But when next day, when this crowd, European crowd, brought Zelensky to the White House, and after that Zelensky was talking to the media, and some Europeans were talking to the media, and they say, nobody can prohibit Ukraine to join NATO, no territorial changes, no nothing. Actually, I will quote some of the statements by Zelensky and his team. They, from April 22, when Boris Johnson came and prohibited Zelensky to accept the deal negotiated in Istanbul, which was actually proposed by Ukrainian side and which was initial. But after this was undermined by Boris Johnson, now we know that he got about £1 million from his friend to continue the war, because his friend was selling arms to Ukraine. So after that, they said no negotiations with Putin, no negotiations, only he must be brought to International Criminal Court. We want European soldiers, we don't want no ceasefires, he was saying only 1 year ago. And then in September this year, he said to give to Putin one or another piece of land, this would never happen. It is not a solution, this is just a pause. And isolation of Russia is what must remain forever. So when people now say ceasefire, ceasefire, we know that they want just to buy some time again. And that this logic, which is deeply rooted in Zelensky, whatever moves him, brain, is obvious for any objective observer.